Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. Today I wanted to go over some questions that I feel like I fumbled in the video I did with Steve at Gamers Nexus when it came to discussing tariffs. I was in a rush when he came by, I didn't have as much time to spend on it or think things over as I like, and as I talk about it more, I feel like I've fleshed out my thoughts in the entire thing much better. So I wanted to go over some of the questions that I don't think I answered in the way that I should have answered them. One of the most important questions in that entire video that we did was, how do you get normal people to care about this or understand it? Usually when they watch the news or turn on the television, they see these rich CEOs or even average business owners talking about these issues, and they go, oh yeah, QQ, cry me a river, business owner who's bitching about the fact that you make less money. And I think that it's an important thing to go over. When you look at a lot of the people that Steve talked to, these are people that have made more money in a single year than I will make over the course of my natural life. I could keep working from now until the age of 90, and I'm not going to have as much in the bank as the CEO of Corsair makes in 1 year. To be clear, I'm not saying he didn't earn it. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I don't know one way or the other. I don't keep up with PC parts or the companies involved. I don't know this guy from a hole in the wall. The point is, this guy makes more money than pretty much everybody in my audience. I'm going to take a wild guess at that. When you look at the compensation, you could read through a lot of their proxy statements and see for yourself. I could work until the end of my life. I will not have as much money in my bank account as this man does after 1 year. And the problem here is that when you watch the news, what they do is they tell the stories of people who are public, of people who are rich, of people who are prominent. They don't really do a good job of telling the stories of average everyday people. And I think that that's a big problem. Even myself, there are a lot of comments out there saying, yeah, cry me a river, man, that has a 2,000 square foot house. You are rich. Here's the sad thing. A lot of people were pushing back on the people that would say stuff like that, like Lewis ain't rich because he has a 200,000 square foot fixer-upper house with builder-grade windows that are falling apart because the mortar work on this entire effing house was allowing water to seep in, which caused my way. This house is a clusterfuck. I'll leave it at that. But here's the sad thing. In America, when you look at the statistics, when you look at what average people have in the bank, when you hear things like I forget the exact percentage, but more than it should be, don't have enough money in their bank account to cover a $1,000 emergency, I am rich. Even if I do have a fixer-upper house, I got $80K in retirement. If I didn't have income for 2 years, I'm probably fine. By year 3 or 4, I'm really uncomfortable with that and probably got to figure something out. But the point is, I'm not rich by my standard. I don't feel rich. Rich to me is I don't got to work for the next 10 years. Rich to me is I buy a house that has proper windows and fucking mortar work to begin with. But I understand and I appreciate that I'm better off than a lot of Americans. I understand that. So even when I talk about these issues, the people in my audience, the great majority that do not have $1,000 in the bank to deal with a serious emergency, they're going to look at this and say, QQ, cry me a river, man that has his own business and has 80K. It must be nice to have 80,000 in your 401k. The fact that I could be considered rich the way that I am right now, personally, I think that is a sad commentary on the state of American society and the economy in general. And that in and of itself could be a 3 to 10 hour video. So we're not going to get into that right now. If you want average everyday people to care, you got to start telling the story of the little guy. And the problem is that nobody gives a fuck about the little guy. And once the big guy becomes the big guy, they forget what it was like to be the little guy and they don't care about him anymore. You got to tell those people's stories. And if you're not telling those people's stories enough and doing it properly and looking for those stories, then you can't be surprised when normal average everyday people wind up saying shit like, I'm not listening to you, or you're just another story where you're just mad at Orange Man. Tell the stories of the little guy. Tell stories that resonate with average everyday people. I guarantee you there are small business owners that are where I was when I was working out of a park and living in an apartment filled with termites and had $200 in my bank account that are 10 times more fucked than anything that these tariffs are doing to me right now. It's a little bit harder to find them. It's different than having a CEO or some economic advisor that has $10 million in his bank account talking about it on Bloomberg News. But those are the stories that are going to make a difference. My story got told, but a lot of other people's stories don't get told. If you want people to care about this issue, you got to speak to the me of 11 years ago that had $1,100 in his personal checking, $15,000 in his business checking, a shithole store that was a hole in the wall, 2 employees, and a couple of boxes of screens and some donor boards. I was rubbing 2 sticks together, working until 1 in the morning every single day to do business. At that point in my life, I couldn't go 2 weeks without working without being completely screwed. And you got to tell the stories of those people. Or the me of 15 years ago. 15 years ago, I couldn't go 2 days without working without being completely screwed back when I'm working out of a park, because those people are going to be just as affected, if not way more than I am. Because again, if I have to go a year or 2 without working, I'll be good. By year 3 or 4, semi-fucked. But the point of the matter is, a lot of the people watching are people that can't go one day without working, without being completely fucked. I'm getting my story told, but nobody gave a shit about my story when it came to this 11 years ago, and certainly not 15 years ago. But they're going to be affected much worse than me, because even though my business will make less money, I won't be able to pay bonuses the way that I want. I won't be able to invest in things that I want to invest in. I am not in the position that a lot of people are. There's a lot of solo entrepreneurs and sole proprietors that are at a point where these tariffs can affect them to the point where they're gone. They're fucked. They're back in the situation where they don't have $1,000 for an emergency. And what drives me nuts in general is that the media does not cover the stories of these average everyday people. And I appreciate what Steve did, because he did his best to travel around the country and go over all this shit. And to be clear, I'm not blaming Steve in any way, shape, or form. He did everything that he could. He covered this better than most people in the media did, in my opinion. But at the same time, we have to deal with the fact that the everyman, the sole proprietor that don't have $1,000 in the bank, is not getting a lot of opportunities to tell his story. And I feel like if these people had their opportunity to tell these stories, it would resonate more with the type of person that says, QQ, Crimea River business owner, who's not making as much money as they do before, when it's not about me not being able to pay an employee bonus that I wanted to pay, or invest in something that would have done better for my business into the future, but rather when you're talking about tariffs affecting small businesses in a way where they're back to that point where they have $200 to rub together and maybe they're closing, and now those sole proprietors have to move to their friend's couch or something. Tell those people's stories. They're very important. The second thing that I wanted to go over is the idea of making all the stuff in America again. There's a lot of things that you could do if you want people to try and shift manufacturing back to America. And in my opinion, one of the worst ways to go about that, by far, is to go about it in the way that it's being done now, for a number of different reasons. The first reason is the capital investment required. When you talk about making stuff in America, I can't afford to open a factory in America right now. If I sold my house, I sold everything out, I'm not going to be able to tool up everything that I need to tool up in order to be able to make things here. I'm going to have to find financing somewhere, which means finding an investor, talking to loan officers, or anything else. And when I lay out my business plan to these investors, they're going to look at this and laugh, because if a tariff can be 40% today, 120% later, this is exempt today, but then on Truth Social they say this ain't exempt tomorrow. That's a very unstable business environment. If I would be stupid to buy anything at this point in time, because if I buy something with a 120% tariff that's not exempt now, and 2 weeks from now that is exempt, that means that all of my competitors are going to wipe the floor with me, and I'm going to lose a massive amount of money. So when I look at what I'm doing with my business, at any time that I enter a new portion of my business, I'm thinking about risk. It's not just about the profit I make, it is also the risk of loss. So we are weighing the amount of profit that we're going to make with the risk of losing everything if we do something stupid. And that always has to get weighed. People just look at the profit that's something being made and wow, that's a lot. But you have to think about all the times that our business and other businesses lose because we took a risk or a gamble. And they're going to look at this as a serious risk or gamble. Even if I am able to make things in America, even if I am able to somehow do it in a price competitive way and be semi-successful, they're going to look at this and say, with the unstable environment that we have now, there is no way in hell that I'm going to trust that in 3 years that everything is going to be similar or the same to the way that it is right now, which means that I have zero chance whatsoever to get the financing that I need from an investor or a loan officer or a business, some company or some private investor that deals with businesses in any way. They're not going to give me money to do the things that I need to do, which means that I'm not going to be able to get the investment that I need to build things in America. So if you wanted to talk about building everything in America and you got this high tariff, but you coupled that high tariff with some sort of program for businesses where they say, if you want to invest in doing things in America and you follow this specific strict framework and you stick to it and we can inspect you and see that you did it, we will provide you a loan that you will not get from anybody else. That's something that I could say, okay, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I see that you're trying. You're doing something there that's actually going to result in businesses doing the work to build things in America when the investment and the financing is not there. You're not going to get that at a point in time when we are slashing the government rather than working on programs that would actually make sense. I'm not even saying that the government should be involved in providing these types of loans to everybody so that you could have everything made here. But if you're going to go out of your way to make it as difficult as possible to purchase from other countries, then you got to do something to bootstrap people making stuff in America. Because you sure as fuck don't have a bunch of private equity people investing in building all these factories and all these different industries right now. You got Trump announcing people that were already building or planning to build in here and pretending that it's news for the press and the PR. The money and the investment for the little guy to start start working and making stuff here and building everything in America, that ain't here. And nobody in this administration is talking about it. And nobody seems to give a shit. And as people say, Trump is a businessman. He was a business person. Again, he's a business. You know that saying, the house always wins? He's the only person I know where the house lost. How the fuck do you bankrupt a casino? But point being, whether a bad business person or a good business person, he's a business person. He deals with loans on a regular basis. And I would imagine that he would be aware of this, the way that people invest, how certain people have to be when they're investing large amounts of money, in particular, taking small businesses that are used to buying this stuff in other countries and then deciding to invest the millions upon millions of dollars that will be necessary to tool up to do that stuff in America. No consideration was made for any of this. There's no plan around any of that. There's no there's a tariff, but the tariff is kind of like the sugar, right? You need the cake, you need the bread, you need the dough, you need, if you're making a pizza, you can't just make a pizza with tomato sauce. You need the rest of it. You need the oven, you need the dough, you need the cheese, you need everything else. You can't make a pizza with tomato sauce. You need the rest of it. The tariff is a very small part of this, and the entire rest of the plan, whatever it is, right now ain't there. And I don't see anybody trying to make a plan for any of this stuff. So when people say he's at least trying, in my opinion, no, he's not. Because if you were, you'd have the rest of the plan, and you'd talk about creating the rest of the plan. I don't see any of that right now. Next up is the idea of pricing. Let's say that the financing was there to build everything in America, right? Let's say the financing and all that stuff was there so that can be done. Even if you had all of that, when you look at some of the products I talk about, it's not the way it was in the 80s when Trump is talking about this. When you're talking about a VCR that's $200 from an American-made company and then $180 or $120 from a Japanese company or a South Korean company. When you look at that and you see the difference in the prices, a 100% tariff or even a 50% tariff, it's going to make a serious difference in the decisions that consumers make. When you're talking about today, where there's a product that I can afford to sell at a decent profit at $200, and that product is not just as good as a $1,700 or $1,800 product in America, it is better. It performs better. It has attachments to it that the American product doesn't have. That, by the way, at $1,700, they sell fucking separately. Can you imagine that? $200 product comes with all the different attachments that I need. I buy that thing for $1,700 in America. It's not even as good. And the gall to say nozzles sold separately. But point being, the $1,700 product in America, and then it's like $200 for me to sell you the one that I sell right now. Even if you had a 200% tariff on that product, I would be able to sell it to you for a profit for way less money than the product that is made in America. Which means even if you had a 200% tariff, even if you did have the financing and the infrastructure to make it in America as it is, that product is still not going to sell well in contrast to the other product. Because we're not talking about the VCR anymore. We're talking about $130 versus $180, where a 50% tariff could bring things in line. We're talking to the point where even if you had a 1,000% tariff, that shit is still going to cost considerably less money than the American-made one. And that's something that I don't see people talking about at all. The gap is so large at this point that you can't change it with that. You're going to do a serious amount of damage with that tariff, but you're going to cost people a lot of money. You're going to do a lot of damage to a lot of businesses. You're going to make things more expensive for the American people, but you're not going to accomplish what you're looking to accomplish because it's not 1985 anymore. Next up is when people say shit like, well, listen, even if it's more expensive to make it here, even if the stuff costs 10 times as much, I would buy it. Fuck you. No, you wouldn't. I believe you as much as I believe the people in my audience that say that they read the 90-page end-user license agreement for everything they sign up for. Louis, you're an idiot. I can't believe there's people in your audience that are so stupid that they don't read the 50-page end-user license agreement for every application they install in their refrigerator and their Wi-Fi router and their... No, you fucking don't. I'm never going to forget these types of experiences that I've had where people come into my store, they got a Bernie Fight for 15 sticker on their laptop. There's a repair that we do for $60, where I tell them the reason that it costs $60 here and it costs $50 there is because he has his nephew working for minimum wage and the person doing that repair here makes $35 an hour. And they tell me I don't care. And they walk out and they go to that dude anyway. He fucks everything up and then they bring their phone back here to pay $450 for a data recovery. I can't tell you how many times, regardless of quality, regardless of reviews, regardless of the in my opinion, very good reasons that I cost $10 more than the other guy, that somebody walks out and says, I'm going to the cheap shit anyway. I don't fucking believe you. They'll put that sticker on the device all fucking day, but when they're actually faced with the decisions that allow that sticker to be true, they don't make those decisions. People lie with their mouth and they tell the truth with their wallet. When you're talking about buying products that are over 1,000% more expensive, I don't believe you when you would say you would pay extra for the American-made product. I don't believe you when you say that you'll pay $8,000 for a goddamn smartphone. I don't believe any of you. And you can say, fuck you, Lewis, and I'll say, fuck you right back. You don't read the end user license agreement to everything that you buy. You don't. You're lying. Yeah, tell me more about how you report the $20 on your taxes that your neighbor pays you in cash to mow his lawn. No, you don't. No, you don't. You're lying on the internet, and I don't believe you. Next thing is talking about American jobs. Let's bring jobs back to America. Let's have more people in America be able to create things. If we manufacture things, we'll have more jobs, and that's what we need. And that's something that I actually want to push back at in many ways when it comes to small businesses. In some areas, you'll get more jobs. And there are some things that we frankly need to manufacture in America for our own national security. I agree with that. But there's a lot of jobs that are going to be destroyed by this or never going to be created. You know, one of the things that a lot of libertarian people will say, I'm less libertarian now by a large margin than I was probably in my early 20s or teenage years. But one of the things they say is that there's the seen and then there's the unseen. Everybody talks about the seen, but they don't talk about the unseen. Everybody talks about the 50 jobs that were created, but they don't talk about the 500 jobs that were destroyed to create that would have existed if you didn't do something. And when I think about my company, I'm really thinking about the tariffs from the standpoint of the man that I was when I was 19 years old and I started this business from nothing. I had $260 in the bank. I had probably $500 or $1,000 in debt from various other places. I didn't have two sticks to rub together. I bought 3 MacBook screens. I bought a shitty ass soldering iron from Radio Shack that cost $15 so that I could get that little bent stick that I would use. You know the bent red or yellow stick that would come with the Radio Shack soldering iron that would allow you to plug in the A1181 inverter board wire without having to pull off the clutch cover? I remember that shit. I remember being very, very broke. And at that point in time, when I had $200 or $400 to rub together, because remember, most Americans do not have $1,000 for an emergency. I could not afford to spend $5,000 or $7,000 on my tools so that I could start doing board repairs, so I could start doing everything that I do. I could afford to spend a few $100s. If I needed to spend $5,000 to $7,000 to tool up, I would have never started this company. How many people would have not learned how to do board repair for the 1,000 videos that I did on YouTube if I didn't start this company? How many people would have went to the Apple store and paid $1,000 or $3,000 for a repair that we did for $200 to $400? How many people would have less money in their pockets? How many people would have not gotten their data back? How many people would have had to go to Drive Savers where they charge people $2,000 to $3,000 for an iPhone screen or a fucking charge port rather than come to businesses like ours where we were able to do those same jobs for a few $100? I would have never started this company if my startup cost to start this company was $5,000 or $6,000. It would have just been out of my reach permanently. I grew up poor. I had no money when I started this shit. I had a credit score that was as low as a Tennessee area code. I did not have the ability to pay that. Many of the people that watch my channel are broke. There's one guy, Mr. Tony Tone, he sent me he used to comment regularly. I don't know if he still watches. He was talking about working out of his car and living out of his car. And then he sent these photos that I have somewhere in a folder of the store that he built after he worked his ass off for several years from nothing to build himself up. That guy's not paying $5,000 or $7,000 for the tools that he could otherwise have bought for a few $100 to be able to do his job. When I look at the proteges that I've had, where they started their businesses when they were 16 years old, they saved up money that they made while they were working minimum wage jobs, and then they started businesses where they served thousands of customers. They got hundreds of 5-star reviews on Google. They're doing good work for people. Remember, every single time somebody in this business does a job, that is one person that spent $200 to $400 with us instead of spending $1,000 to $3,000 at Apple. What do you think that means for the amount of money the average consumer has in their pocket? What do you think that means for how they're going to be able to spend that money in other parts of the economy? All of this stuff is not being considered. You're not thinking about the unseen. Now, again, does that mean that we should make nothing in America? Absolutely not. There's a bunch of shit that we need to make for our own national security. We need to be able to make a lot of chips that we didn't make before. We can't get to a point where every single one of our vehicles is manufactured in another country. There's a lot of stuff that we need to build here. But at the same time, this idea that we are just going to completely and utterly fuck with how things are done with no plan, I don't like that shit. Lastly, the most important one that I forgot is that prices are not coming back down. I said something in the video that I did with Steve that I didn't process at the time, and I didn't think about even as I was doing my tariff video. I said, I can only afford to make this mistake 1 or 2 times. And if I make that mistake 1 or 2 times, my business is gone. So what does that mean? I've been in business for 15 years. I have some of the best ratings on Google Maps in my industry. I'm well known around the world, and I can only afford to make this mistake 1 or 2 times or my business is gone. That means I run a horrible business, and that means that my business practices fundamentally don't work. I didn't realize that. That wasn't a conscious thought in my head until I saw a 120% tariff, and I had to wonder about whether or not I was going to have to pay $30,000 or $40,000 for what I was importing over what I was paying before. This is going to sound weird, but you don't want business owners to have to think about stuff like this. Obviously, saying you shouldn't think sounds really bad, but you really don't want a business owner to start thinking about things like this. You like inertia. Inertia is where I do today what I did yesterday because it worked yesterday, and tomorrow I do what I did today because it worked today. And when I realize that I am this close, just 1 or 2 mistakes away from going out of business, I need to rethink my entire model because my model fundamentally has a flaw in it. When it comes to raising prices, a lot of the time it's going to be corporate greed. If a company can fuck you, in many cases they will. However, the other 20% or 30% of it, in my opinion, is people realizing that they made the same mistake that I made with my supply company back in 2010 to 2014. In that video, I talk about how I was trying to compete with people that had way more money than me that could afford to sell things at lower margins. It's actually greedy to lower your price. This probably sounds very counterintuitive, but I want you to think of the math of it with supply and demand. If I sell something with a $20 profit margin, I may sell 5 a day, so I make $100 a day in net profit. However, if I lower the price to where I'm only making $10 of net profit, I may sell 100 a day, where I make $1,000 a day. So the business model where you sell fewer of an item, but you have a higher profit margin, very often makes you less net profit than when you sell large volumes at a lower profit margin. That means there's a much smaller margin of error than there would be if you were selling something with a low volume and high profit. Even though the price is lower, you're not lowering the price because you're a good Samaritan. Businesses are lowering their prices because they know if they can sell more volume, that there's more net profit. This is very similar to banks that will have less cash on hand because that means that they can give out more loans. They're not doing that because they think that everybody should get a loan because they really care about the little guy. They're doing that because they can make more money. And this is one way that banks fail, when they have too little cash on reserve for all of the people that are withdrawing at the same time. This is also something I discussed in a video that I did on Intel's oxidation scandal. A lot of people were saying, why should I care about a company that makes $1 or $2 billion a year? QQ for them. And by all means, Intel is not a sympathetic company by any means. But the point is, from a financial point of view, they made $1 or $2 billion in net profit on $57 billion in sales, which in my opinion is horrible. You're talking about profit margins here that are 2 or 3%. That's bad. I would never want to run a business with a 3% profit margin because that means the tiniest mistake could destroy you. And what I realized throughout this process is that the smallest mistake can destroy me. This is similar to somebody that doesn't have a proper diet. If you don't have a proper diet, and instead of eating several meals a day, you eat one gigantic meal every 30 hours, you may wind up with these little pockets of fat because your body is scared that it's not going to get to eat again, so it holds on to it. And the same thing is true when it comes to a business. When I realized that I was this close to being completely financially fucked, as a result of having a business model where I am selling high volume, low price, do you think that I'm going to be more likely to rethink that business model than I would be if nothing bad happened at all? I've been through this already. I made this mistake 13 years ago where I was trying to sell things too cheaply because I wanted to get higher profits from having higher volumes. And what happened as a result of that is I took one of the greatest opportunities that I got in my life, where somebody gave me a pretty nice investment and loan for a great company, and I ran it into the ground. I destroyed it horribly, and I lost all the money involved. Not just the investor's money, but a bunch of what I had saved as well. Even if the company that's selling me the goods decides that they're going to lower their price again, I got to think about what I'm going to do with mine. And that's a hypothetical that I don't even have the opportunity to consider at this point, because several of my suppliers have called me and they've been honest about it. They've said, Louis, you keep saying in public that this product we sell is better than products that sell for 2 to 5 times the cost. So why are we selling it to you at 1/2 to 1/5 the cost of the products that you say are worse than ours? They've had to rethink this. They look at their price, they look at the fact that the price is going to go up, and they think to themselves, this is going to sell anyway. And it's not even about greed for them, because they're selling something that is 1/5 the price of a competitor that sucks. Are they greedy for saying, instead of selling it for 1/5 what my competitor's product costs, I'm going to sell it for 1/4? I don't think so. I think that that's them realizing their worth and realizing their value. And this is why I said that you don't want businesses to rethink their entire model. This is why you don't break the statute, because even once you try and glue everything back together, it's not going to look the same as it did before. You're going to have all those cracks in it. The same thing is true here. This is why you don't fuck with the economy based on a tweet on a social media platform and try to change everything radically. Because when you do all that shit, it doesn't go back to the way that it was before. People change the way they do business. You're giving people an opportunity to rethink things. And when you have tariffs that are like this, that are so high and so inconsistent, it's going to make businesses realize, I have not eaten in 1 or 2 days. Maybe I should retain some of the fat as a result of it, just for my own self-preservation. Maybe I should have more profits as a form of self-preservation, because the profit margins that I was making before, that doesn't work. That was a mistake, and I can't make that mistake again. You don't want to break the inertia. You don't want to have businesses reassess their entire model and realize, I wasn't making enough profit before. I'm raising my prices, not because I'm being greedy, but because I was destroying the stability of my business. So maybe I should charge more for that GPU. Maybe I should charge more for that processor. Maybe I should charge more for those speakers or that printer or those headphones. And when people continue to pay that price, they realize, I was undervaluing myself before. You know what it feels like when one of my suppliers calls me and says, you know what, Louis? You've been saying over and over again that our product is better than shit that costs 5 times as much. Why are we charging you 1/5 what they would? I don't have an answer to that. I can't lie and say, no, your product actually, it's not really that good. I just say that stuff on the internet, but that's not true. Yeah, you're right. Your product is better than stuff that costs 5 times as much. What am I supposed to say? Keep undervaluing yourself? You don't want that person to wake up. You don't want that person to realize that the shit that they're selling is too cheap. Don't give them that opportunity. That's why you don't set economic policy by fucking tweet on Truth Social. That's why you go through Congress. That's why you want to have a stable decision-making process for everything, and you don't want to just break everything all at once. This is something that I said about me in several videos ago. I forget exactly the one, but I remember saying something along the lines of, I don't want you to judge me based on my intentions. I want you to judge me based on my outcomes. That's why I don't come out here and talk about how Repair Preservation Group is the best nonprofit ever, and look at everything I did. I raised $900,000 from you people. I was able to help a lot of people in this coalition get a bill passed on tractors, and that's pretty good. Get a bill passed on wheelchairs, that's pretty good. And I even read to you an email of somebody that probably would have waited 4 to 6 months to get their wheelchair fixed, that got a new one sent to them in a few days. But when it comes to the consumer electronics industry, frankly, I'm with Andy. We have access to less parts now than we did several years ago. We have less access to schematics and everything else than we did several years ago. We're in many ways screwed. Did we get bills passed? Absolutely. Did those bills particularly help you very much? No, I'm not going to lie to you and claim that I won. I did a video last year explaining exactly how I feel that I lost. And I don't want you to judge me based on my intentions. I want you to judge me based on my outcomes. And that's going to be a lot of harsh judgment that I earned and deserved for not succeeding in what I was doing. If I'm going to have that standard for myself, then I'm going to have that standard for other people, especially when, in my opinion, they put less effort into their plans than I did when they had every single resource available, tens of millions of billions of dollars to have the best people on earth come up with plans, and you come up with nothing, and you're doing everything on a fucking, and you're coming up with the shit as you go on a social media website. Again, when you have a tariff that can be set by the president who's ignoring Congress, who's coming up with these fake emergencies, people investing, the people that are giving out loans, they want to see a stable environment. They want to see that that Congress is setting tariffs, that it has to go through the checks and balances. They don't want to see that tariffs and trade policy is being set on social media by one man. That makes them feel like it doesn't make any sense for me to invest in this area because everything could change tomorrow and my investment could be worth shit. The next one is that maybe this means that people will be less consumeristic, and maybe, is that even a word? There'll be less rampant consumerism. Do you really need a new phone every 2 years? Do you really need a new TV every 3 years or a new laptop? And I agree with that. I am all down for us to have a less consumerist society. By all means, there's a lot of waste. At the same time, the tariff exemptions are not coming to people like me. They're going to companies that are far up in the S&P 500 that have a lot of lobbying money, that have the ability to advocate for these types of exemptions for them in a way that I can't. For all, even you people that think that I'm rich because I have a 2,000 square foot fixer-upper house and because I could not make income for 2 years and be good before I have to start thinking about working again. Even for you people who think I'm rich, do you think I have the same budget for lobbying as companies high up in the S&P 500? Who do you think is more likely to get a tariff exemption? Apple and Google or me? So when I don't get a tariff exemption and I got to pay 100 or 120 or 140% tariff on a lot of different shit or the tools that I need to do my job so people stop selling them, that means that the tools and everything else for the repair people become more expensive. And it also means less people getting into the repair business, which means higher repair prices and lower availability of repairs. Now, when people are debating whether or not to buy a new product, that very often has to do with the price of repair. If the price of repair is too high, people buy a new one. This is going to increase the price of repairs. If you increase the price of repairs while the product prices stay the same because they're able to get tariff exemptions that I'm not, what does that mean? You have actually increased people's incentive to buy a new item. You're actually encouraging consumerism by making repairs more expensive. You know how you hear Trump rail about the elites all the time when he's campaigning, the elites this, the elites that? People that have billions of dollars in their bank account are going to pay less in tariffs than me, than Andy, than Northridge Fix, than Jessa Jones. Does that sound fair to you? Forget about the fact that this will increase the cost of repairs, which is the very thing that causes people to decide to buy a new one. Does that sound fair to you? Because again, when we're talking about the people in my audience that will say stuff like, yeah, cry me a river, Lewis, with the more money you have than me about how you're losing money. The gap in funds between the poorest person in my audience and me is less than 1% of the wealth gap between myself and Tim Cook, between myself and any CEO in the S&P 500. You want to talk about how, oh, QQ, cry me a river because you have more money than me. How do you think I feel when I see people that are worth tens of billions of dollars getting tax and tariff exemptions that I don't get for like my Sanford & Son truck company? In conclusion, I completely understand the desire for things to be made in America. In practice, I don't think it's being done properly, and I'm going to talk about it. I don't care if I'm talking about New York City government being incompetent, or I don't care if I'm talking about a Republican administration having no idea how basic economics work. This isn't about partisanship. This is about the facts. This is about me going over what I see as I see it when I see incompetence. It doesn't matter who's in office. It doesn't matter the letter next to their name. And one of the things that drives me nuts more than anything else when I see people talking about this is they're doing this thing where I'm not listening to you. I don't hear you. I hear somebody else's idea being channeled through you. And that's the part that's the most frustrating. I don't want to hear somebody else's ideas in your head. I want to hear your ideas. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your opinions, but I'm not hearing your opinions. I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm reading what you're saying. And when I read what you're saying, it feels like a copy pasta. It feels like somebody who is not thinking and processing, but rather acting reflexively and saying something because they had this triggered, aggravated feeling. I remember reading this study a while ago, and it was talking about how when people hear things that go against the way they view the world or their political opinions, they actually become angry, and there's literally cortisol that flows through your body from stress as a result of hearing that. And that makes sense. If we think about the way we have evolved as humans, if you talk about several 100,000 years ago, forget about politics. If my worldview is incorrect and the wolves are actually coming from that direction, not this direction, or the tiger's coming from there and not there because of the way the world works, if you tell me that I'm wrong about these things, that means that there is a chance that I will be eaten alive by this wild creature. That is very scary. There's a legitimate reason that I want to keep my worldview, and that when I hear anything that is contrary to my worldview, I'm going to be stressed. At the same time, this is going to be a very difficult thing to do, but we can't turn off our brains every single time we hear something that's contrary to our opinion. This is something that I was guilty of even as recent as 5 or 6 years ago. I would read something that's contrary to the way that I view the world, and I could feel myself a little aggravated. I could feel myself trying to find information that reinforces what I was saying, and I would feel myself not really even able to finish the article and getting pissed off at it and trying to question the motivations and everything behind the person who wrote it. Now, by all means, you should do all that stuff. You should question it, but you shouldn't be at a point where you feel yourself becoming physically aggravated when you read or hear something that goes against a person that you like, a person you look up to, a product that you purchased, or anything else. One of my best friends, one of the things that she imparted on me, she said, don't allow people that dislike you or hate you to take away the one thing that matters more than anything else, your brain and your ability to use it. Don't turn off your brain because the person that's telling you something is somebody that you believe would not like you. Take in the information, listen to the information, and say at the end of it, you know what? I still want to do what I do. I still want to believe what I believe, and I still want to think what I think. It doesn't make me a bad person, and that doesn't mean that I need to change my mind on what I believe immediately. I can have two thoughts at the same time. I could watch Not Just Bikes' channel, and I could nod at the entire thing and say, this makes total sense. As I move to a place in the middle of fucking nowhere where very likely that the amount of money I pay in property tax is way less than the amount of money that it costs to maintain this particular area. Because I like the view that I get. I like dealing with peace and quiet after living in a place where I felt like a sardine stuffed into a can for 32 years. It's nice to finally have a little bit of peace. And I could tell myself, yeah, that guy's completely correct. I agree with everything you're saying. As I live here, I can read information that goes contrary to my belief system and contrary to how I live my life. I can accept that information and simultaneously accept that that doesn't make me a bad person. And it doesn't mean that I have to change my entire life because I read something and I said, yeah, that makes a little bit of sense. I don't have to work backwards and try to think of reasons that you're wrong and have this cognitive dissonance and go out of my way to get angry at it or act in this reflexive way. I can read something that's contrary to the way that I believe or contrary to the way that I act. I could take it in. And I'm going to ask that a lot of you do the same. You could keep your opinion, and you could continue to like the people that you like, and you could continue to vote for the people that you vote for, and you could continue to disagree with something while simultaneously being open to the idea. And that's all I'm asking. I want you to have your own ideas. I want to listen to what you think, what you say. And if you're not thinking because you're just having the ideas of other people in your head and being a conduit for the ideas, I want you to think. People should have ideas. Ideas shouldn't have people. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something. Also, many people have commented that I haven't made videos on a regular basis in a while. What's going on with that? I don't make videos when I feel passionate about a topic and when I am excited to talk about it. I'm not going to get out here and make a video because I'm supposed to churn out content on a regular basis to feed an algorithm. I make a video on a regular basis and I get several 100,000 views on each one. Great. I don't make a video for 2 months and I get 5,000 on something. I don't care. I have a business, I have work, I have other things that I do to make money. This is my creative outlet. This is what I do because I actually enjoy it. I yell into the camera for 10 or 20 minutes when I feel like it, and I feel refreshed. I feel good. I feel like I got something out that I needed to get out. And it works for me. But when I don't have the idea, I'm not going to come out here and just make something up. I can't do that just to make videos. Or they're going to be shit, and I'm going to feel like shit for it. It's not what I get out of this. I actually enjoy having this as a creative outlet, but I'm not going to try and make things if I'm not feeling it. I'll see you in the next video. Bye now. But before we get to the next video, Blackberry the kitten. Blackberry, we're going to have you on the microphone. Hi. Oh, piece of shit next time. Psst, psst. Hi. Why do you gotta go to the back of the microphone? Here, I'll put it on Omni so that no matter where you are, they can hear you. Omni. There we go. Hi, girl. Psst, psst. You're my menace. You're my good girl. Who's my little menace? You're my menace. I love you, little Blackberry. You're a good kitty. Come back. Psst, psst, psst. What are you doing over there? Keep me company. Come here. Come here. Good kitty. Good kitty. You're so spoiled. She had a can of Reveal, and then she had another can of Halo. I give her the Halo because it's got all this stuff in it that cats supposedly need, taurine and all that. I give them Reveal because it's the closest thing to real food. You read the ingredients in Reveal, and it's literally something like, what is it? You have like turkey or chicken, or that's it. It's like chicken, water, not all this byproduct and other bullshit. What a spoiled little kitty. This cat drinks bottled water. You spoiled little. Texas water is really kind of shitty compared to New York water. I'll give it that. One thing that New York just can't be beat on is the water. It's just the best. I didn't understand why people spent money on bottled water. It made no sense to me until I would go other places. Florida is one of the worst. Don't get me wrong. You know, the taxes that you don't pay are more than enough to make up for that and buy water. But I just had to throw that out there. Not everything is bad in New York. All right. See you in the next one. If I can only, you touch the microphone, you're out of here. I'm going to buy a dog, I swear to Christ. I'm getting a dog if you touch the microphone. You don't touch the microphone when I'm recording, little Barry. No! Motherfucker. Oh, no, 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 you don't. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. No. I'm going to pick you up. I'm going to pick you up, and I'm going to put you in the kitty door. You go over there. The kitty goes over here. The Lewis is over here, and the kitty goes... No, the kitty goes over here. The kitty goes over here.